Welcome to today's episode, where we're excited to feature Light for Veterans, an incredible organization dedicated to helping veterans and first responders find purpose after service. Their mission goes beyond raising awareness by actively supporting grassroots organizations that empower individuals to navigate post-military life. We'll be diving into how they're making a difference through charity events like their golf tournaments and their collaborative efforts and work with Spartan Wellness. Let's hear more about their journey and the impact they're having on the community. It's my great pleasure and privilege to introduce Dan Marsh, CEO, co-founder, Light for Veterans. How you doing, Dan?
Thank you so much for having me, Riad. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. And you know what you're doing is amazing. We know how much support veterans, first responders need out there in the communities. And I'm just really, I'm happy to be here with you. We're here at Spartan. We have the 5 keystones to wellness, which includes self-care, community, innovation, education, and empowerment.
Right.
Through Life for Veterans, how have these played a role in fostering community empowerment for veterans and adjusting for life after service?
It's such a great question, Riad. For me, for my own personal journey, it's mostly what I can talk to, mainly because Light for Veterans is actually a very new organization. We haven't even gotten through 1 year yet. So reality is I'm really coming from my own personal experience in some ways. So yeah, it's funny. I don't necessarily think about all of these things on my day-to-day life or how I'm going to, implement these things with Light for Veterans. But when I actually take a look at them, they are really great keystones, as you call them, for wellness. So in my own world, for example, self-care is huge. I was diagnosed with PTSD 3 years ago, and about 5 years after I left the military. And in that time, I was, trying to be a personal trainer, golf fitness coach, all these things. So I got a really good understanding about what physical health and to a degree mental health looks like, but mostly on the physical side of it. And for me, sleeping, minimum 8 hours a day, getting lots of water, 2 to 3 liters a day, try to train every week, and then eating well, because what we put into our body and how we operate our body is going to help set us up to deal with the stresses and anxieties, PTSD, OSIs, whatever we have. And I also think it's super important that we also focus on the things that bring us joy every day, right? So for me, that's golf. I get up and play as much golf as I can. You and I, we've played some golf together, right? And you see me on the golf course. I might get pissy or whatever else, but as we say, playing golf on a Tuesday is better than being in the office, right?
Exactly.
So self-care, I think, is really, really important. And me personally, I'm still on my journey. I do have prescriptions for medical marijuana, for example. So, I'm still in the zone of trying to figure out how that all works for me personally, but I do believe in it. So yeah, self-care, I think, is really important. As far as community, Light for Veterans, that's sort of our nutshell that we're trying to really foster and bring together. So, you mentioned it before. What we try to do is we try to organize golf tournaments where we can bring together not just veterans, but also first responders. And because in my mind, I mean, they're veterans as well. They're serving, they're spending a lifetime in service. We want to connect those veterans and first responders to the programs and services that they may not necessarily know are even available to them, right? So, and I find golf, you and I connected over golf a few months back, but, golf is such a wonderful opportunity to find community in tight, small little packets, right? Like you go out with a foursome, you meet a couple of guys, you might not like them, you don't play golf them next week, right? But, as you kind of get out there and you start communicating, you start, meeting people, you're going to start finding other like-minded individuals. And that's what we try to do at these golf tournaments. Not only is it about the grassroots organizations, but it's about connecting their target market to them, creating that community, and as well as bringing in the corporate world as well to sort of not just spend money and sponsorship and whatever else on these tournaments, but also for them to really understand what does it mean to be a veteran. Right.
Exactly.
And and the big part of that is when if you're a veteran or a first responder that you're suffering, you're feeling, in a dark place or whatever else, when you come out to these sorts of events, you realize you're not alone. You're not the only person that's in these shoes, and there's light at the end of the tunnel, right? So, community self-care is super important. Innovation. I mean, I'm not overly like an innovative guy, so to speak, but so I can't really talk too much. But
well, innovation like in the new driver or new irons or new golf balls. I'm sure.
Yeah, right. I'm constantly
all of us, right? Yeah.
Again, on the education front, part of Light for Veterans, situations that we're a resource hub. So whether that's finding crisis hotlines or programs like the Caddy School for Soldiers, where you go away for a month to good old St. Andrews, Scotland, right?
Great program.
Those are fantastic programs. But what we also like to do is we also want to find programs such as Spartan Wellness, right, where they actively help veterans and first responders get educated on, what are the pillars of health and wellness for you guys, right? Mm-hmm. How does that affect them? How does that help them move forward? We want to help broadcast and loudspeaker those sorts of initiatives. So education, we don't deal with tons of education ourselves, but we like to point the direction into organizations that do that, because ultimately it's kind of like therapy, right? Like, you can go and find 5 or 6 different therapists that you don't like, but then you find that one therapist and you're like, I'm good to go. I'm cured, right? So, just like for veterans and first responders, we're all different. We all have different, focus points, and it's about finding enough programs and services, whether that's education, whether that's innovation, whether that's, a program that's overseas, whether that's crisis hotlines, whatever. We want to help educate veterans and first responders to at least what's available to them. That makes sense. And that's ultimately how we intend to empower our veterans and first responders, because ultimately for Light for Veterans, our client base is really the grassroots organizations with an eye on facilitating empowerment for veterans and first responders, if that makes sense. So, it's that's kind of how I see how Light for Veterans fits into those sort of 5 key points of wellness, as you asked.
Yeah, it's important. You said great points, though. There's so many little communities of veterans and first responders all over the place, and there's all these little groups that are there to help and give them some support, right? There's obviously the medical support, going through that process, but there's also finding hobbies and finding activities that rest your mind and so forth, and it's important, and it's almost impossible to try to figure out where they are and whatnot. So a great organization like yours being able to find those types of support systems and then be able to educate people on them I think it's great, and it's a real privilege for Spartan to take part in that and sponsor those events and be part of those events too.
Amazing, and we're very grateful for that too.
Yeah, man, it's good stuff. Listen, we all have to transition. I know you talked a little bit about it. What do you think some of the hardest challenges are of transitioning from the military and entering civilian life again?
Yeah, again, I mean, I have firsthand experience on that, and part of where Light for Veterans kind of came from was because of my journey, right? And I don't think it's a unique journey. In fact, I think it's probably a fairly common one, which is almost a sad thing. For me, when I left the military, I don't know what your experience was, but for me, it was like, oh, come do this 1-day seminar on how to write a CV or a resume, whatever, right? come do your CV, your resume, because you haven't written one in 20 years. And like, and you're sitting there going like, well, I was infantry, man, like, shooting guns and blowing up stuff. I don't know what the hell I'm putting stuff, you know what I mean? Right. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I felt like there was never really a good, at least when I got out, a good transition process. It was sort of like, don't come to work, come only when we call you if we really need something for the last 3 months of your life. And then, here's a nice lunch, and then bye, have a nice life, see you later. If you need something, reference the binder that's this thick.
Yeah.
And, like, you know what I mean, right? It was sort of like, go to the Legion, go to VAC, and piss off, basically, right? And so I think for me, I didn't even know I was suffering from PTSD when I left, and all the signs and symptoms were there for people to figure out. No one even brought it up to me. It wasn't for 5 years until I got diagnosed with PTSD and whatnot. So, for that first 5 years out of the military, I mean, I was, I didn't think anything was wrong, number one, because why would I?
Yeah.
Even though I'm super angry, I'm volatile, I'm cranky all the time, blah, 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 right? But also, I had no real direction. I wanted to be a police officer. I thought, okay, I'll go do that. Military experience, this, that, and the next thing. And, of course, I get through the process and I have to drive to Kingston for 3 hours to go and do an interview at 9 a.m. And, sure enough, for psychological evaluation, of course, I failed that. But, I think that the biggest issue for me was even knowing what was available out there, right? You sort of loosely hear about the bigger organizations, whether it's Wounded Warrior, True Patriot Love, Soldier On, etc. But that didn't really do a whole lot. You know what I mean? Like going to a golf seminar for one afternoon, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I love it. I get to explore different things I might enjoy doing, but that doesn't change my narrative, right?
Yeah.
And so after I got diagnosed for PTSD, I was shipped off to the OSI clinic, and next thing I know, I'm just a weekly patient, counting up all the different, appointments I had in a week, and that almost made it worse to a degree. You know what I mean? Like there's a definite time and place for those things. I definitely needed those resources.
Yeah.
But I think it's really easy to kind of get sucked into that. Like, oh, I'm on a DEC now. I don't have to worry about money. I can just go to my appointments weekly, smoke weed, and go to bed every week. But at some point, at least for me, that, started to look pretty dim and gray and ugly as well. And I was just sort of like, well, is this all I got left for the next 40, 50 years of my life? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I know I'm sort of taking some time around this, but,
this is good stuff, Dan. Like, the thing is you said it well. Your story's not unique, but it needs to be told, right? People need to hear it.
And so, I mean, this is sort of the genesis of Light for Veterans, right? Like, I don't really want other veterans going through the same situation that I myself, and I'm sure thousands of other veterans have gone through, right? I want them to at least know they have options, right? I want them to know, and again, we're small, we're very small, obviously, but as we grow and as we sort of expand over the next 5-10 years, our objective is to be in military units, go to, police associations and fire associations and whatever, and let them know when you get out, come to Light for Veterans. We have something for you, right? We have resources, we have programs, we have interest pieces, we're a phone book. Come check it out, right? So that's sort of, even though there are a lot of challenges, through adversity, we find potential, right?
Well, they say the greatest inventions are made because of a need, right? And I will say this, and I know I've talked to you a lot about it. I really like the name Light for Veterans because light is, there's light, and we all need to go to the brightness, the light of happiness and resolve. And so many times a lot of us are just in some form of darkness, right? We're just alone or whatever. So I really I think the name just in itself, Light for Veterans, is very, very, very motivated and captivating, right? And it's just a great concept you're doing, and everything else. You know, we got Remembrance Week coming up, Dan.
Mhm.
It's a hard week. I know every year it gets a little harder for me. I become a little more emotional. You know, the armor chips away, right?
Yeah.
And just thinking about it now, it you know, it chokes me up a bit. But you know, what does it mean to you personally, and to the Light for Veterans? And you know, can you reflect any kind of advice for our brothers and sisters and our many comrades and stuff out there?
Sure. I agree with you. Remembrance Day is always hard. You know, I lost a pretty good friend in Afghanistan, 2008, and when we got back from Afghanistan, it was on Remembrance Day that we interred him in Winnipeg with his family, with the battalion there, etc. So, you know, every year it kind of harkens back to that bitterly cold November 11th in Winnipeg. So it is a challenging day, but you know, I also think it's an opportunity to reflect a little bit on the journey that you know you've been on, the journey that's taken you to this point today, and who you are, and you know whether you're in a good place or a bad place or any other place, you know your life's journey is what got you to today, right? And so, what I mean by reflecting on that is, you know, we're never going to forget about our friends that we've lost. We're never going to forget about, you know, how important it is to remember them, to remember their sacrifice. But I also think it's important to use it as an opportunity to look forward, right? I often ask myself on Remembrance Day, you know, what would my friend want for me in my life? Would he want me to be in a dark hole? Would he want me to be upset? Would he want me to be, you know, not living my best life? And I'm sure the answer, especially my buddy. I mean, he was, you know, Carpe Diem 88 was a foundation started in his name. Like he was all about living for today. And so, you know, I think it's really important to, you know, well, as you just mentioned about, you know, hardships, you know, are in innovation, you know, right? You know, the hardest parts and the hardest times in our life can serve as a learning purpose and serve as a tool for education and learning and growing, right? You know, I've recently had some friends who have been dealing with some tough situations personally, and they aren't even veterans or first responders.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at them and I say, look, you know, if you think ending your life is the answer because life is hard, don't.
Yeah.
There's always light at the end of the tunnel, right? There's always an opportunity. Something can change that you are not expecting that completely can change your narrative. For me, that was the Caddy School for Soldiers and Warrior Adventures Canada and Camp Aftermath, and finding these programs that I didn't know existed. And I found them through the grapevine, through hearing, whatever else. But it wasn't until I'd gone through those programs, and for me, it was reconnecting with some military buddies, and that those programs were what helped empower me to find my purpose after service, which is the Light for Veterans Foundation, right? And so I've been down that dark road. I've been to that place where I'm like, should I even bother? Like, what's it worth? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, when I'm driving down the road and I see two cars instead of one, and there's only one car on the road, right? Like you sit there,
Yeah.
why am I doing this anymore, right?
Yeah.
But the point is you never know what's going to come around that corner. You never know what's going to change your life for the better, and you never know how your journey, as painful as it can be a beacon of hope for somebody else. So, I mean, that's what I would say is just, you know, focus on the light, not the darkness.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you're right. You know, it's, as we always said, it's lessons learned, and you know the greatest lessons we can learn are from ourselves, most times. But yeah, I know to everybody out there, like Dan's saying, it's you know, we just got to remember it's a hard week. Let's here to support each other. There's great organizations out there like Lights for Veterans, and you know, obviously Spartan Wellness, and you know, just remember that our fallen are looking down on us, and and smiling and say, having a beer or whatever it is they're drinking up there.
Or preparing to put a boot up our ass.
Yeah. Or they're waiting for wait for when we get up there to say, hey, now you owe me.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, thank you so much for sharing your aspiring journey, Dan. It's I truly appreciate it coming on and doing this. And like I said, it's you said it perfect. These messages will help inspire and motivate someone who might be struggling and not really knowing where to go, and hopefully they look for Light for Veterans and get that support.
Thank you.
We invite you to join us for the rest of the week. But Dan, I know we're going to see each other at the Sound of Remembrance concert at the War Museum on the 9th. Pretty excited.
Yeah.
Going to be a great show. And listen, all my best. And looking forward to seeing you soon. And very excited to see how big and how strong and how amazing Light for Veterans grow. I know they're in good hands with you.
Riad, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate being on here. And I'm really looking forward to working a little bit more closely with you in the future and really helping to empower veterans and first responders to find purpose after service. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye. To all our veterans and first responders, thank you for your incredible service. We invite you to join our absolutely free webinar, Freedom to Live Well, created by our virtual care squad and delivered by Spartan Wellness ambassadors. We're committed to supporting you on your wellness journey and believe that great things happen together. Book your wellness appointment today at spartanwellness.ca.